Lee. So Lee has informed me that that the following needs to be read. Is that correct, Lee? It does need to be read, right?
Yes.
This meeting is recorded by video and audio in accordance with state open meeting law, consistent with the governor's orders suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and banning gatherings of more than 10 people. This meeting will be conducted by remote participation. If you are calling in on a phone, or you can press *9 to request to speak. If you're watching on a computer or device, there is a raise hand button, mic, that you can tap or press to request to speak. Please use either of these options during oral communications to be recognized to speak.
And Mike is here.
Oh, great.
Good afternoon.
Hey, Mike.
Mike,
Hey, you made it. How are you?
Oh, my.
It is challenging for you to get on this. I don't know why.
I'm not sure, but I don't get these emails. I'm trying 2 different email addresses and here I am, still coming in late.
All right. Well, so I'm going to sort of act as if I'm interim chairman here for a moment, and then we'll talk about it later in the meeting. So I hope people got a copy of and had a chance to review the meeting minutes from the July 13th meeting. Do we have any comments or suggested edits to those meeting minutes? Hearing none, can I have a suggestion to approve the July meeting minutes?
motion to approve.
Second,
Any further discussion? All approved? Sorry about that. And I forget the process. Do we need to, Lee, do we need to each of us formally approve these, or it's fine just to say aye? Well, let's just raise your hand and say aye, that we approve the minutes.
Aye.
aye.
All in favor. Second on the agenda, business park status, industrial park signage. So I know that Taylor cannot attend today. I didn't get a briefing. I don't know if anybody else has heard any further that they want to add to that.
Well, he had emailed me earlier and we had talked about moving forward with this, and then probably, I know he's busy and I haven't actually had time to even pursue this for most of the summer. So it's still, in fact, I don't know exactly where we stand on the progress of this. He had some input from some of the people at Blackburn, but I don't actually know where we stand at the moment.
Okay, anybody else? All right, so we'll wait till next month's meeting and hopefully get an update from him. The second item on the agenda, I think I put on there, public meeting, Admiral Green, 58 Great Republic Drive. I had seen a notice, so this is the property adjacent to NOAA, right at the end of Great Republic Drive. There was a public notice that they were having a meeting, I think with the intention of potentially developing a cannabis growing facility and or retail operations. Did any of us participate in that meeting and or have any information about the status of that project?
I did not.
I did not.
I did not.
Well, hearing none, if Lee, if you want to say, have the notes reflect that, I will follow up and find out what the status of that development is and report on that at the next meeting.
So who was the meeting with? Was it with the Community Development Department or something?
Well, it was a public, somehow or other, I got a public, I don't think I have it right here with my notes. It was a public meeting. I mean, I think it's preliminary, there's nothing, the site hasn't even been fully cleared yet.
Well, I wonder if it was with the Planning Board or the Board of Appeals. That's the only two that would have been a public.
Right. that makes sense. And I know obviously if they,
I can share, I actually have that, I have that here, Admiral Green, 58 Great Republic Drive. So this was received August 11th from the Gloucester Health Department, City of Gloucester. It was addressed to the mayor, City of Gloucester Planning Division, and abutters of 58 Great Republic. Notice of community outreach, public meeting for marijuana cultivation manufacturing establishment at 58 Great Republic Drive. Yeah, it looks like it was more of an open Zoom meeting to answer questions. I can forward this to the team here.
So, I mean, if
All
I
right,
understand, Ruth,
so-
you would know better than I or us. So this is by right, if they would like to have that as a cannabis growing facility, right? And they can get the partners or investors, it's a by right use. Is that correct? You know?
I don't want to say yes. I think it still has to go before the city council, but I'm not 100% positive. But what makes sense to me is this was not a public hearing. So it was not a public hearing before the Board of Appeals or the Planning Board. It was the developer inviting the public to give feedback or to hear about it and information about it, which is really smart thing to do.
Sounds good. Well, I will follow up and report back. Condolin Road, again, this would be Taylor's bailiwick. I don't know if anybody has any other thoughts or has anything to report on Condolin Road activities. All right. Could be a quick meeting. EDIC sponsored or supported community projects, CADA on demand, sponsorships, activity and use. Mike, do you want to report on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big open question was around Beth Israel Leahy, the Addison Gilbert group. They had indicated that they wanted to fund $5,000. They were making a recommendation to Tom Sands, who's the new president there. This is Jason Andre, who is the then, he was acting VP of community benefits, and we actually met him. Felicia and I met him on his first day of not being acting anymore. So his first official day, and his boss had arrived 10 days before or so, 2 weeks before, as the new president. They were really big on this in the meeting in terms of recruiting and such, but then also had a community development meeting today, which I attended probably an hour and a half of, and Felicia did as well, where they're kind of outlining the plans for going forward and larger grants that they would look to make. And I think all along they've been saying that they think that CADA On Demand could be an interesting platform for underserved communities. So that's kind of the latest, but I reached out to Jason several times before this meeting and have not gotten a clear affirmative in writing that they're going ahead with that $5,000 request that they had recommended to their CEO. So other than that, Felicia did send out some interesting stats today. Over just under 1,600 trips have been provided, 184 riders for July. About the same numbers for August, and that she said she's not going to be able to make it today, but they've got the financial and grant management sections of their federal triennial review this afternoon. So that's kind of what's going on over there. They've not yet started the 6:30 a.m. start time because they don't have the staffing right now, but it seems like they're making some progress there.
So it seems pretty good. I mean, roughly 50 riders a day on average. Certainly seems great. I mean, I guess from our standpoint, the question would be how many, and do you know, Mike, if she's tracking this, how many of those are employment related?
And how many go to Market Basket?
Right.
Well, I don't know. I'll tell you one thing. I was waiting for this meeting to start, and I looked out my window, and the Cato On Demand bus pulled right up in front of my house. I thought they were going to be delivering me the login instructions, so I was quite impressed. But then it turned out they drove away. So
I see those vans all over the place, so.
I mean, it's really great to see. So yeah, it's good, a good question in terms of kind of destinations. I know that that information's available destination wise. I'm not sure whether she's got data yet that reports back to, kind of free rides for employees of sponsors, right? I'm not actually clear on how much of the funding has been collected yet by anyone who's promised it, and how that whole transfer of the rider codes operates. Let me talk with Felicia about that though.
I got to think, at least on the Blackburn end, that when this pandemic finally winds down, or if it winds down, when the employees go back to work up there, that I think it's got to be a ton more people using that service from the railroad station, from the train station, or any place actually. But they're still operating basically manufacturing people only, and nobody's in the office up there.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, Tim. In that meeting that we had, like a month and a half ago, at Addison Gilbert, they were really big on this as a recruiting tool, and basically being able to expand their staff to people who don't own cars or don't want to own cars, whether they're in town or whether they're out of town and coming from the station. So, I mean, they totally bought into that, and Gorton's did as well. I mean, they've made a small contribution just because they think it's the right thing to do, as opposed to trying to get riders, but they said they were also including that in their recruiting materials. So I think you're right. They think so too.
I think it's just going to continue to grow, and by all the feedback that I've heard from throughout Gloucester and from people that actually use it, is they love it. People love the service.
Well, I think I told you before that I had seen someone use it at Market Basket, and when it was first proposed to us, that wasn't the way we were thinking about it. And I just think it's wonderful that it's there as a resource to everyone who doesn't have a car.
So there's no doubt that Felicia and Kata have been great in being flexible and seeing sort of beyond what we originally conceived of as this last mile service, and that's been fantastic, certainly.
Well, and I don't know if you all know this, but they just donated a bus no longer in service to the police department's community impact unit. I don't know if you saw the press release that went out, and there were lots of pictures and the ribbon cutting a couple of days ago.
Oh, cool. No.
Great.
All right. Two other activities that we've been involved with. So I'm going to give a little bit of a status update, and then hopefully a little bit of sort of a optimistic view. So the status update on the North Shore Blue Economy Report. The report is finished. A executive summary has been developed. We thought we were ready to do this at the end of September and had to push it back due to some scheduling conflicts. So the current date is to have the release and the Zoom meeting on October 15th. Which would also coincide with a sort of a smaller invite only meeting on that day, which would include, hopefully, if her schedule remains open, the Lieutenant Governor, and then the Vice Chancellor of UMass Dartmouth, who did this work for us or oversaw this work for us in a previous job. He would then do the presentation. So we're very excited about sort of finally releasing this and getting on to phase 2. So that's scheduled for October 15th with a backup of the 22nd. And there's a lot of work by Katie Call at the UMass Marine Station, working with UMass and other partners to try to put together funding for, sort of big time funding for phase 2 further development and focus of certain areas of the blue economy. The other thing to report here is on the Municipal Harbor Plan Committee, on which I'm one of, I forget, 7 or 8 members. We've had a kickoff meeting and then 2 other meetings, and we have one again this week. Most important to us is that there's a economic baseline assessment that has been done as part of this consulting work. And it's early in the process in terms of the municipal harbor plan development. We have clearly communicated that this is as much about economic development of the maritime industry and the development of a thriving 21st century cluster as it is sort of a planning zoning exercise. But the first public meeting will be held in October, and so then it will start to get more interesting as the public gets more involved and expresses their pros and cons about what they would like to see in this harbor plan. But I think for our benefit, among other things, is between this North Shore Blue Economy Report and this Gloucester Economy Report, we have 2 pretty comprehensive and good economic analyses of what is going on in this community and or this region. And so in terms of, and when I talk later today about sort of understanding the future of the economy, whether it's blue economy, whether it's manufacturing, whether it's tourism, we have information about what sectors are thriving and are not, what are average wages, how are people traveling. We're going to have a lot of information, I think, at our fingertips within the next month to be able to inform maybe where we want to go as an organization and what type of economic development we, as well as the city, want to promote. So I think that that's going to be really valuable to us. I will send out the link to the economic assessment that was done as part of this Municipal Harbor Plan Committee. I have some comments and questions, and there's some apples and oranges as it relates to sort of the fishing living resource section, apples and oranges between how the North Shore Blue Economy economist looked at the data and how a different economist looked at the data. So we're sort of working behind the scenes to make sure that we can send a consistent narrative to everybody, or at least point out why or how things might be different.
Tom, are there substantial differences between the interpretations of either group of economists? You know what they say about economists, right?
What do they say?
Oh, well, I won't repeat it here.
I would describe the main difference, and hopefully I won't get in trouble, is that the economic review done for the Municipal Harbor Plan paints, I think, a pretty positive picture of the fishing industry, groundfish, lobstering, seafood processing in Gloucester, and that doesn't align itself with the either mythology or the perception that fishing is dead in Gloucester. And truthfully, I have some comments and questions, but I mean, that is consistent with my view that we have more positive going on than we think we do. And the question is how to strategically invest and promote and support, that industry, rather than write it off. So,
I agree. I totally, there's a lot going on. I mean, I think you forget about your own personal lives and how often you stop at the fish truck or go to Conley's or Turner's or KP and Lobsterman. It's, and the pandemic brought out the fish truck, and KP and Lobsterman are doing huge business.
Right. I mean, lobstermen are probably having a great year. The price has stayed really high, and even they've had the good lobstermen have had good years for a number of years, and the top fishermen in this community, are bringing in 60 to 80,000 pounds of fish, every week to 2 weeks. So there's a lot of good stuff happening. So it paints a really positive picture. The North Shore Blue Economy Report doesn't paint a negative picture, and certainly it's one of the target areas to grow going forward. But it has some data that's not quite as positive as what was in the Municipal Harbor Plan Committee. And again, we're trying to figure out, did we look at different data? Was, the North Shore Blue Economy covers the entire North Shore versus just Gloucester. So we're trying to sort of understand those differences. But each are positive about, either the fishing or what they're calling the living resource sector.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yep. So next on the agenda is new business. So, and anything else that folks want to talk about is game. So I've put on their chair and this outstanding question of replacing Bill. And then I've also put together, or as a bullet item, and I've put together a PowerPoint, sort of the future of the EDIC. And what the intent here is, I've had a conversation with Jill and Sal, to say I would be interested in being the chair of this committee for at least the next year. But my interest in it, and proud of what we've done over the last few years, and I played no role in it, but the EDIC has been extraordinarily important and instrumental in economic development of Blackburn and Condoleezza over the years. I'm interested in, over this next year, really taking a hard look at the EDIC and what its role could be sort of in the future, or how it needs to change. And so along those lines, I'd like to queue up a little presentation, if everybody has 10 minutes or so, just to sort of walk you through some thinking here. Lee, do you want me to open up mine, or can you just load up what I sent you?
Lee, you're on mute.
I didn't get the that file that you sent,
Okay, so I
so I
can,
apologize. So I did share the screen. So if you want to load it up at your end.
okay. See if I can.
You should be able to share, Tom.
Yeah.
There's a share button in the middle down below, green.
You know how to do that, Tom?
Oh, I thought I did, but it doesn't seem, I thought I could drag this into,
No, I think you have to click on it and
Oh,
open
here
it.
you go.
There you go.
so that's not what I want to share though.
You just have to go find it. I've learned to do this by getting my document on the screen before I start the meeting.
Yeah, because then it will pop up. So if you close this, well, there you go. You got it.
Is that on now?
You brute forced it. Good job.
Yeah. All right, so future of the EDIC. So I'm going to walk you through a few slides where, you already know all this stuff, but so EDIC established in 1977 in accordance with, this legislation, Chapter 121C, that John Cunningham has spoken about before. Broad goals of promoting economic development by attracting new industries and expanding the workforce capacity of the of the city, and the board, as you well know, is 7 members. And I've sort of emphasized and read a couple of key things, including, you know, our independence, that we are not a board of. Well, I can't. Can you guys still hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So the under 121C, when we signed up for this existing legislation, there was a process by which all EDCs in the Commonwealth need to work, right? And that is that there, you know, needs to be a economic development plan that's approved by the municipality, not in our case, the city council, with the approval of the mayor. And then projects are part of, then can be undertaken consistent with that plan, but they also have public hearings and other sort of processes in which you need to follow. So there's it's under 121C, it's limited to manufacturing and industrial, and there's this specific process that must be followed. So I've quickly put together this sort of strengths and weaknesses of a sort of our type of 121C, which, as we just said, we're going to be exactly like this legislation. So the strengths are clear mission, clear authority, independence from the city. It makes available financial tools. We can float bonds, etc. We have a certain amount of recognition or brand or credibility as an EDIC for the city and in the Commonwealth. And at least in our case, and it's not always the case, you know, there's a strong working relationship with the city. I think the weaknesses are it's limited to manufacturing and industrial, strictly speaking. It's a very, as I've said, a sort of formal prescriptive process in terms of developing and getting approval for a plan and then doing these projects that obviously led to, for example, Blackburn Industrial Park. But we have no environmental, or we have no plan or no specified projects at the moment and haven't for some time. There is no economic development plan per se that the city has put together and or put forth. The EDIC financing tool, while seemingly at an advantage in conversation with John Cunningham, you know, it was not used in the development of Blackburn Industrial Park. The city, you know, used its bond rate, better bond rating and financial mechanisms for financing. And again, if you looked at it right now, I mean, we probably are not in a position, we don't really own any assets. We don't have that much money in the bank. It's hard to imagine how we could float a bond. We no longer really own any substantial assets, such as land, a few small parcels, but we're not, you know, it's the bottom line. And we have no ongoing revenue stream. So anybody want to, at this point, anybody want to add to what they perceive as sort of strengths and weaknesses? Or do you think I've captured it okay there?
I think that's a fair assessment. I'm not seeing any glaring, like, you know, missing strengths or weaknesses, but anybody else?
It's Sal Di Stefano. How are you? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Sorry, I'm in the car right now. What I do want to say about when you had said that there's no economic development plan put forth from the city, what I'd say is that between the municipal harbor plan, housing production plan, local rapid recovery plan, and others, there's multiple plans that are segmented that impact different parts of the city. And before I got here, there was an economic development plan that I think the city worked for with the EDA, with EDA's support. So I just wanted to add that piece of just information for the board when that specific issue came up.
Thank you. Good, good additions.
But I like what you're, I like that you're examining this, and I appreciate your time when you met with Jill and myself to go over what your thoughts are. I think it's good, and you know, hope that we could be of help, continued help to the board. I'll put myself on mute right now.
Okay, thanks, Al. So this slide just says that, you know, the model by which this our EDIC was created and you know has done the work that it has done is simply one model, that there are other organizational models, you know, including redevelopment authorities, community development models, a lot of the, in talking with the state, a lot of the EDICs that were set up like ours with sort of this generic legislative language have over the last, you know, really 40 years have generally languished. The more active, and I don't know enough to call them effective, but the more active models were created under 121C with special legislation where, you know, you have to ask the legislator to say, we want to create an EDIC, and the purpose of this EDIC may be broader or simply different than what's in that generic language. So it can include, as this bullet says, commercial businesses, recreation, social services, you know, housing. It can name, it can both name a broader scope or a different scope, such as the harbor, or it can modify the process by which it does its work. And as I said on the final bullet, I mean, the state, it's clear that EDICs are not sort of, in most cases, with a few exceptions, you know, sort of an economic engine for economic development throughout the Commonwealth was my sense of it all. So this next slide is, I mean, as I said before, I mean, I'm really proud, and I hope everybody else on this board is, of the work that we've done. But I think given the core mission and elements of an EDIC, you know, sort of, it's not clear to me that we're building the tree, namely playing a major role in economic impact with new jobs or bringing new businesses online or building new clusters, that we're sort of playing in the leaves, right? We're promoting things such as GMGI and biomanufacturing. We're providing financial support to CADA, to the North Shore Blue Economy Study. We're at the table with representation, as an example, at the Harbor Plan. We're sponsoring and encouraging new initiatives such as the CADA on-demand service. You know, when we're playing a coordinating role in being sensitive to and promoting the tenants or the businesses in Blackburn and Condolen. And I think this is all great. It's just, in my judgment, and I welcome differing opinions, you know, it's among the leaves. We're not necessarily building out in a hugely impactful way, attracting new businesses, building, you know, adding new jobs, addressing blighted areas, etc. So the question is, you know, I think we are in front of us some fundamental questions that, you know, we've asked over the course of the last year or two, and I know in talking with Sal and Jill and Greg Catamatori, Greg has been around the longest as the planning director. You know, the EDIC, and Ruth, you could probably confirm this, you know, has been on a roller coaster for a number of years where it says, you know, what are we doing? What should we do next? You know, et cetera. And I'm interested over the next year in trying to, you know, sort of answer this right or wrong, but once and for all. So it's asking ourselves sort of fundamental questions such as, you know, what are the projects that we want to do that are aligned with the core mission of an EDIC that support economic growth and job creation? You know, are there what blighted or underutilized sites exist in Gloucester that could benefit from the support of an EDIC or comparable organization? You know, what sector or cluster might we focus on in the years ahead? I mean, and I'm sure that you have your own set of questions. These are these first three questions are big picture questions. And then the final question, you know, is, you know, if we knew as a group, we've all been brought on this board to help support job creation and economic growth in Gloucester, you know, what's the best model to achieve those goals? Because maybe it's different than our current model. So maybe I'll stop there and ask for, you know, any thoughts or questions as to sort of this path I'm going on.
So if you don't mind me commenting, I think I've been saying for 2 or 3 years that the EDIC, because it doesn't have land to sell, the word is really support. What other types of industry or industry on the harbor, at the other little industrial park in Magnolia, on just business in general? You know, how can the EDIC support? Is there a way to think about creatively our money that we do have, micro grants? Yes, the money will run out. Yes, then there's another decision to be made when that happens. So I'm happy that this conversation is taking place and that Tom is even considering taking a leadership role on a board that sometimes feels like has nothing else to do.
Yeah, I think this is Mike. I think that Ruth, I generally agree with what you're saying. I think probably one underlying question would be, if we're going to continue in this mode, is this organizational structure, you know, whatever you know, constraints it puts upon us, is it the best way forward to do it, right? You know, or I was telling Tom the other day, I saw some great examples of organizations that were we're pursuing that EV car charging, you know, model that he threw out just as a, oh, by the way, at our last board meeting. And, you know, it's happening locally, it's happening around other places as well. There are possibilities for generating revenue and finding revenue streams. But, you know, there are definitely some clear disadvantages we're at from a continuity perspective, right? Yeah.
So thank you for, and I agree. I mean, I think a core question, Ruth, is, so in addition to the ones I've posed, you know, what does support look like for, you know, our EDIC or our organization? I mean, this is a very, you know, basic sort of, but, you know, assuming that we would go through a route, you know, a process to examine and sort of come up with some suggestions, you know, the fundamental questions: what do we want to do? What can we do under the current EDIC model? Benchmark other EDICs and or other organizations and do some level of a gap analysis. So we come up with, you know, either what's the best development model to achieve our goals, or, you know, are we looking to give micro loans and sunset the organization? Are we, you know, at the end of this, would we propose, if it's even legally possible, to, you know, be subsumed by, you know, the city community development director? You know, all of this goes to the fact that I have no agenda. I don't know the outcome of this or what I'd like to see. I just want to be on a, I think this is an important organization, and has some money. I want to be with a really talented board. I want to be with a group that's creating economic impact in Gloucester. And not, you know, sort of wondering, you know, what it's doing or where it's going. So, and then finally, you know, again, just sort of how do we get it done? Board member participation. Are we prepared to work on, you know, this? Do you guys agree with me that this is really fundamental for us to wrestle with this, and you'd be game for it or not? You know, how do we do that work to, you know, do that examination and analysis and come up with recommendations at the end of the day? Do we bring in, you know, advisors? I mean, these
Yes, yes, that's the key.
Yeah.
We have the money to spend, and so it doesn't have to be thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, but everybody either dedicates a lunchtime hour or an evening hour when we bring our own food, whatever it is, and we pay somebody to help us go through these things. And
But I think, yeah, I interrupt you, Ruth. Go ahead.
no,
Sorry.
it's okay. I mean, the chamber does this all the time, not every, you know, but every year somebody, a professional comes and talks about the chamber's going through, and Tom's a part of it, strategic planning, as is Carl Guston. There are people in the community who do this work. And they
I
already
think-
live here.
Yeah. I mean, my thinking is like, you know, we'll undertaking this whole effort here, is it going to increase our chances for success, right? I mean, I think we need to identify, and again, this doesn't have to be formal either, but you know, what are the answers to some of those questions about what we could be working on that you know could have some really positive outcomes, right? And then, you know, is the idea of reorganizing or not, like, you know, or is that going to limit, or is that going to kind of unlock some running room that we have and some chances for more success? I mean, I think a lot of this ought to be, you know, what do we think is important, and then how do we enable ourselves to achieve that, right? And if there are, you know, structural impediments, great. Can we get those out of the way? Or do we have to reinvent something totally new, or can we you know, morph what we have into something that's more optimized? But again, I think it needs to come back to, what do we want to accomplish, right? You know, we're not developing large tracts of land anymore. I mean, we ran with that for a while, right? But we didn't really come up with anything that looked that promising that got people really excited. Good effort, right? Didn't have, you know, the land that we have just isn't, like, you know, probably the, you know, what we'd ideally have, right, to embark in that. Same with some of these other initiatives, right? But let's think about what we want to accomplish. What does success look like? And maybe that's part of that facilitated conversation you're talking about.
Yeah, I really think that's the key question, and thank you, Tom, for bringing us back to it. I mean, we started when I first came on the board. So what is it, 3-4 years ago? And we really started to have this conversation, and then the pandemic overtook us. So maybe one thing we can do is go back to where we were and see if there's anything worth salvaging from that conversation. But I think the key focus is, what do we want to accomplish? How do we even define success? And not worry for now about what kind of strictures we do or do not have because we're an EDIC. Let's figure out what mission we want, and then we'll figure out how to get there.
Just one more point. I would suggest this doesn't need a 12-month deadline. I mean,
Yeah.
you give yourself a deadline of 90 days and you dedicate one session with a consultant and then some time to review some recommendations they may make. But when you do, when someone does those kinds of meetings with some, it's like the clouds part, things become more clear when someone else who's more objective than probably us on the board helps you see what the vision is.
Yeah, I'd be game for that. I mean, I think, my intent in sharing all of this with the group is one, I think we're all in general agreement. The question is, are you game for this? Because it should take some work. I mean, we're asking important questions and hopefully identifying some, meaningful, outcomes that we'd like to achieve and we think can be achieved. And then, so that's the first question. The second is what's a reasonable time frame? I agree with you. A year, even if it's reasonable, the shorter you can do it within a reasonable amount of time, the more it sort of maintains that energy level.
Yeah. I like that.
Tim, you've been quiet. What do you? What's your reaction to all of this?
Well, what I keep coming back to is the least underutilized area in industrial development is the waterfront. And it seems like, all the other tracts of land, like you said, are filled up in the industrial parks. So where can we go from here besides underutilized waterfront to get more industrial uses conforming to, whatever codes they are? And I think that's an area where we really have to target. It's been stated before, but I don't know where else to turn to bring industrial and jobs into this community without really looking at the waterfront.
Exactly.
And Tim, I mean, one reason I know that, you were brought on and are interested is with your strong connections to Blackburn and Applied, obviously. I mean, not to put you on the spot, but you'd be game for this sort of endeavor over the next, 3 months or 6 months, whatever it might be.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, good.
But I think Tim's point, well taken, well made. That's a perfect example of, how do we define success, and then what are some of the blockers to our current structure constraints, right, that we're working under, right? So that's not our purview. So I mean, that's okay that's an outcome that we want and we're all keen to work on, but that that takes a different tack that we have to take than if our idea of was charging 15,000 cars in Blackburn next year or whatever,
Yeah.
right? We kind of have a bit more control over that without having to make probably some major changes, right?
Yeah.
But the upside of for everybody, for the community of pursuing the waterfront, do we have the votes we need? Do we have the the alignment, the partnerships, the backing to actually let us get involved in that? Those are some questions that these conversations are gonna surface, right?
Yeah, I really think that's, in a way, that's putting the cart before the horse. I think we need to figure out what we want to accomplish. And I agree that the waterfront is a prime suspect. But I think we should delve into that, figure out what we want to, what the end result looks like, what success looks like, and then start asking those questions about what we need to do in order to get the consensus around whatever it is we need in order to start down that path. I don't think we should be looking for obstacles. Those are easy to find.
Mm-hmm.
We should figure out a positive end goal, and then start figuring out what the steps are we need to take in order to reach that goal. And if it's if it's city council action or a state statute or whatever it is.
So I don't disagree. I just think that when I sit and think about what other industrial uses, how do we attract companies? How do we attract jobs within the purview of the EDIC? If we don't broaden our scope a little, I'm not sure what effect we can have within with the industrial parks that we have, and they're full. I mean, we can create small changes here and there, but I'm at a loss with where we stand now without broadening our scope, how we're going to affect any change.
Yes, I think we need to discuss that at greater length, but I think that's right.
Right.
General agreement here.
And right, and as Ruth has always said, and every major employer in this town says, I mean, certainly housing is a huge issue as it relates to attracting new businesses or economic development.
Absolutely, up and down the economic ladder.
So it sounds like everybody's on board to sort of envision the future here. What's the best way to get started? Like, I'd like to be, obviously, if we're going to move at an even reasonable clip, we need to get work done between meetings. Are people game for either getting together? I mean, in general, we're a small group, or doing Zoom meetings and or some level of an assignment, such as identifying, for each of us, what would we want to accomplish, Jerry, in your words, but sort of give an assignment and then, meet on a Zoom call and get some progress done, sort of, at least have one meeting every 2 weeks, and then we'd report and share and have a hopefully good discussion at the board meeting. Is that any thoughts on the best way to proceed and what people's times are and what they have to give to this?
Maybe start with sort of in general, I agree with that, but maybe start with kind of a brainstorming session where there are no limits, no structure, just anything goes, and just get stuff out on the table. And then look and see if any good ideas were produced out of that.
I don't know if this is even possible with a public body, but I do it, but I don't personally do it, but it happens frequently in some of the nonprofits I'm involved with, where, and I don't even know how to do it, but sending out a survey just amongst us that just asks some really basic questions. We've just spent almost a half an hour brainstorming. I think you could write out some things. I really think, Tom, may I suggest that you chat with Ken about what this conversation was, and he may have some suggestions about who could come in and work with us. And I, for one, would prefer to do it in person, but I'm happy to do Zoom too, if
Right.
that would be the majority would agree. And this, this timing during the day is fine for me. And just so that we don't have any people worrying about getting home for dinner or whatever, we'll just, maybe we order out, or somebody can take the orders and go get it and whatever.
Yeah, I think getting together in person would be good. If everyone is agreeable to that, and anyone who's not, we could always just, have some people attend remotely, but.
And we need to check, Lee, unless or some of you with more public board experience than I don't think that we can.
I don't think so either.
We can meet. I think anything more than at least as a quorum. So I think we can meet in either smaller groups, or maybe you can get around it if there's no decision making to be had. If you're simply brainstorming and there's no decisions that will be made, maybe you can get around it. So I'll find out what we can or can't
I
do.
think John Cunningham would be the person that would know that.
Yeah.
But we can meet to brainstorm. You may have to jump a few
Are you
hurdles,
talking,
like notice the meeting, but you could still do that.
are you talking about COVID regulations or just public meeting
No,
notices?
public meeting, I think
Public
is.
meeting.
is the
No,
problem.
no, I just assumed it would be a public meeting notice.
Yeah. Yeah,
Because I know the licensing board's meeting in person, but I haven't kept, I don't know if the city council is. I know they were going to start in September. I read the Board of Appeals and I don't know if they're in person yet, but I think September was when everyone was going to whirl into public meetings.
Well, this was a question of state law, right? And I think that it was the governor's, wasn't it the governor's declaration of an emergency that required us to do it this way, and that's now ended?
Yeah, I think that has ended. I think there are some boards that are beginning to meet.
Yeah, I know the licensing board has been in public just this last time. But the city council has been on Zoom up until the last of August.
So let me find out what we can or can't do, and then get back to the group, hopefully in the next couple of days, and with either proposed date and time for a brainstorm session, or some little doodle poll, so that we can schedule something. So I wasn't thinking this, but Ruth, it's your suggestion that for the brainstorming, even that we would have a facilitator or somebody to guide us through that discussion. Am I reading you right?
Well, yes, because they have no clue what the EDIC is about or where it's come from. So I think they just need to sit in and maybe not participate, but just sit in and listen to what each of our thoughts are. And then have a meeting where that person is guiding us through what you're talking about, Tom.
Okay. All right. And to the extent that any of you guys have, I will talk to Ken about that. To the extent that any of you guys have suggestions, I know Sal has a suggestion, but I welcome anybody's suggested people that you think might be good at helping us in this endeavor. All right.
I just want to add one other topic is
Yeah.
in that collection, because we talked about housing, which is critical. But I think another critical piece is vocational education. Creating,
Good one. Good one. Very good, Jerry.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you bringing that up.
thank you.
Well, I mean, a perfect example, and Tim probably knows better than I do, but I know Applied Materials has helped the vocational department a lot over the years. And because they saw it as a tool to bring in experienced and trained apprentices, so to speak, machinists. And, there's a newfound interest in vocational education. I mean, it's been happening for a while, but it's slow to get there. And so this conversation, I think, is really helpful to help the city see it's really a priority.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think the timing is perfect.
Well, and I also think we can define it to use Tim's words about broadening our, sort of scope, is that the, workforce training, not just vocational training, but the kind of stuff that GMGI is doing and recognizing, which is to say you don't need to necessarily go to college for 4 years to be well trained to do something in biomanufacturing or a life science lab or even lean manufacturing. You can get a good paying job if you have these skills, and you don't need to have spent, $200,000 in college to get that.
No, that's a key point. And I would include that kind of education and training as part of vocational education. I think. And it's it's obviously a natural for this community.
I mean, I don't know if all of you know, this was before pandemic. I've lost track of time. We've all lost 18 months of our lives. But Warren War, his automobile company, they donated $300,000 to the Gloucester Education Foundation to support the automobile vocational shop at Gloucester High School. And I believe it's a payout of over 3 years, but still, that was a big deal.
Yeah,
I was able to buy new equipment.
yeah, no, that's terrific. That's right.
And it's all enlightened self-interest. They all need skilled workers.
Well,
Exactly.
that's exactly it. And so, and if the skilled workers are here, that's going to help build an industrial base.
So it's probably a conversation for another time, but I'd like to know where the Gloucester school system, what their thoughts are on bolstering up our own vocational school instead of just thinking that everybody's going to go up to Essex Tech, which isn't really possible anymore. They only take the best, and there's a lot of people being shut out there. And we have all the facilities right in Gloucester to really have multiple vocational shops going at the same time, like it was, when I was in school, it was full in the 70s, the
Me too.
60s and 70s.
Yep, me too.
Excellent point.
All right, great. Much to discuss. Any other business that folks want to add to today's meeting?
Not for me.
Oh, sir.
All right, so I'll be back in touch to try to arrange a in-person brainstorming session that conforms with the open meeting laws. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
I always like to do this first. Just, the next meeting is, Lee, I don't have a calendar in front of me. I know I have it written down, but I always like to just say it out loud, and it just helps everyone to remember.
So as you're searching, I assume then that everybody is okay with me informing Jill that, it's fine to, if the mayor wants me, to recommend me as the chair of the E EDIC.
Fine with me.
Oh, it's
Highly
good with me.
recommended.
I was going to actually thank you for stepping up, not just stepping up to volunteer, but stepping up with this agenda and this whole kind of thought exercise. To get
Thank you.
rolling.
Yeah, absolutely. I joined that.
So I think the next meeting is October 12th because it's the second Tuesday.
Correct.
Does that feel right? Okay.
It does. Yeah.
Good. Am I right? The 11th is, what is that holiday?
Well, no, I'm sorry. So it's the 12th. I said the 11th, but it's the 12th. So the 11th is Columbus Day.
Good.
Sounds good. So motion to adjourn?
Can I ask one last question? How might I get dial-in information in advance without breaking any like security rules or anything?
I'm going to check on your email that the IT department is using to see your login status, and I'll go from there.
I really appreciate it, Lee.
I'll work on that tomorrow.
All right, thanks so much.
No problem.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you.
Move to adjourn.
Oh, that's right.
Second.
Second.
Bye.
All in
Aye.
favor? Aye.
All right.
All right, ciao.
Thanks, Lee. See you
Good night,
soon.
everyone.